Hello and welcome to a new episode of SPC Conversations. My name is Greg Gross. I serve as Vice President on the Board of the Directors of Solidarity with the Persecuted Church. SPC's mission is to help the Christian church persevere in areas of the world where it faces religious persecution, working with local church leaders to promote sustainability and resist persecution. We also work to increase awareness here in the United States and around the world of the plight of Christians in these areas. This year, our focus has been on Christians in Nigeria. And here with me today is SPC's president, also its heart and soul, my good friend Steve Wagner. Welcome, Steve.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Greg. It's kind of silly to say that in a way because we are good friends and I see you regularly, but you've done a wonderful job in hosting these video podcasts.
Well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to have you with us once again. This year, you've been to Nigeria, and with our team and supporters have worked tirelessly to advocate for Nigerian Christians with the U.S. government and to raise funds to provide aid on the ground. Before we dive into this tragic topic that brings us here today, would you tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself? You've done so much in government, the private sector, so many amazing things that you've done, helping others through policy and action. Why don't you give our viewers a sense of your background and experience?
Well, you're being overly generous, as is your wont. It was a great pleasure, an honor to found Solidarity with the Persecuted Church, 15 years ago with you and a couple of our dear friends, as a way of raising money in the United States to support the church where she's being persecuted. And the idea is if we could help the local church undertake projects of their own determination, we could help those churches persevere in very difficult environments. And on behalf of SPC, you've traveled to Iraq and Syria, which were countries of our early focus. Now the board, you and others have decided that Nigeria needs to be our focus, which is for very good reason. I've sort of gone in and out of government over the course of my career. I was acting assistant secretary at the Department of Health and Human Services in the first Trump administration, so I have a great interest in social services in the United States. I worked on the issue of human trafficking also for HHS in the George Bush administration. And when I wasn't doing those things, I was running my own firm that did public opinion research. So I've been a denizen of Washington for many years.
Right, and you've had years of experience, and you've always maintained your sense on the good result, the purpose of all of this. And as you've mentioned, I went to Iraq and Syria, and this is a long time ago now, if you think about the years that have passed. And unfortunately, we're dealing with a tragedy in Nigeria that is just as bad. Mm-hmm. And unlike what was happening with the depredations caused by ISIS, there is an extraordinary lack of awareness, at least until recent months, about what's happening in Nigeria. Talk about the trip that you took on behalf of SPC, bringing a documentarian in June of this year to look at what's happening there.
Right. So I will mention that we have a wealth of video products that came out of that trip and your conversations and other events that have occurred. We wanted to do this podcast in particular because so much has changed. And I think it's fair to say there's been a significant progress with Nigeria. We got interested in Nigeria because it is the country where more Christians are being martyred than any other on the globe.
Combined, right? Yeah.
That's right. So we fear that over 7,000 have been martyred this year. It's a place where a huge number of Christians have been displaced from their communities and are now living in camps or in host villages. We call folks who don't cross international borders internally displaced persons as opposed to refugees. Same thing, really. But we have 3.5 million Christians in IDP camps in Nigeria, and until recently, the government of Nigeria was not acknowledging that any of this was going on. It was logical for us to take a look at Nigeria, and as you say, I made a trip there with Jordan Allett, the very accomplished filmmaker, in order to bring back video evidence of what's going on. We went in order to develop relationships with partners, people, churchmen with whom we could collaborate on projects, and also to understand the situation. And it's unambiguous, Greg, that there is a concerted effort to drive Christians from the nation of Nigeria. It is a jihad, it is externally funded, it is externally armed, and it is not accidental that we have 3.5 million displaced Christians and a far smaller number of displaced Muslims. There are Muslim victims in this violence that's been perpetrated by Boko Haram and some of the other terrorist organizations. But the current violence against Christians is being perpetrated by a tribe called the Fulanis. And it's just unmistakable that their intent is to drive Christians from their traditional villages.
Even before you made this trip and we were reaching out to so many people in Nigeria, amazing leaders of Christian churches, others that are involved in this battle, how many were hesitant. Some, in other words, the people that are dealing with this problem, including the victims, the priests and so on, are facing two problems. One is the worry that if they talk about it, they're going to be subject to even more jihadist violence. But also, there's a desire to be silent about this, certainly on the part of the government, but also among those that you think otherwise would be wanting to talk about it. Even before you went there, we saw that. Yeah. So talk a little bit about that and the courage, frankly, that people showed when you were in the country to talk on camera about what is happening there.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The strategy of the government of Nigeria was to deny that anything was going on. It was very clear to me that that wasn't the reality. The reality is that there's a strategy against Christians going on in the country. This changed dramatically when the president declared Nigeria a country of particular concern on Halloween of this year. You'll remember when I came back from my trip to Nigeria, I said that there were three things that we really needed to work on. One was to get the U.S. government to encourage the government of Nigeria to step up to its responsibilities and provide a rule of law for all citizens, in particular Christians. Christians who were victims of violence could not call the police or summon any officials to help them. They were being ignored. And you participated in our efforts there. We went and briefed senior officials in the administration, at State Department and others, and told them our perspective was that this is not accidental. This is an intentional anti-Christian initiative that's going on. And in fact, we were acting on behalf of Nigeria. We were trying to sound an alarm out of fear that Nigeria could very easily fall into civil war if they did not respond to the violence that's being perpetrated against Christians. There's only so long that the Christians in Nigeria would remain silent. You know, you push somebody into a corner and eventually they're going to lash out. So all of this changed, I think, pretty dramatically with the president's decision.
Well, I urge our viewers, Steve mentioned the videos that are on our website and our YouTube channel, and they're available on Facebook and the other social media channels. I urge our viewers, if you haven't had a chance, to take a look at them. They're powerful testimonies, and the people that are speaking are showing a tremendous amount of courage in doing so, as Steve mentioned, because it's not only the perpetrators of this violence, but it's also a complicity in the sense of silence and inaction on the part of the government, which fortunately we would like to think is changing. But do go to our website, take a look if you haven't. Powerful stuff. And I might add, in our conversations with the State Department, the fact that you were there, showing them videos of you walking through an internally displaced person camp where there were thousands upon thousands of people, some cases been there for years, without homes, living in tents, without the international support that typically you find in these cases where the United Nations, NGOs, and so on.
That's
and
right.
here the government's desire not to have this acknowledged meant that there was no invitation for these groups to come in, who are happy to help, and even happy to do it in a quiet way. And that was striking too.
Well, you're right. First of all, we traveled out of the capital of Abuja to the city of Kaduna, which is north of the capital city. So as you go north in Nigeria, you are encountering larger percentages of Muslim population. So this is a majority Muslim area, and it's a place where Christians are, to this day, being routinely kidnapped for ransom demands, typically, or just out of gratuitous violence. And so we recorded over 20 testimonies of people who had been victims in that part of Nigeria, including a number of priests. Priests are a popular target for obvious reasons. They would like nothing better than for the priests to be intimidated and leave the area, those people who are perpetrating the kidnapping. And you know, actually, priest after priest and lay victims of the kidnappings would say, I was convinced I was going to be killed. And I put my faith in Jesus Christ, and he saved me. And it's so powerful to hear that. And it wasn't one, it was again and again. We heard of peoples whose faith was stronger than the threats of the kidnappers, who often require their victims to repudiate their faith. And these priests and the lay members of the Christian church wouldn't do that, and that's why they were convinced they were going to be killed. And obviously the ones we spoke to survived, and they had an incredibly powerful testimony. One other quick anecdote. To your point, we have a very heroic Catholic bishop by the name of Wilford Anagbi, who represents an area where a lot of the violence has been occurring in the state of Benue, Nigeria. This is now a little bit south of Abuja. We traveled there during my visit. Bishop Anagbi came to the United States, and he testified before Congress on the state of affairs. He said there is Christian persecution occurring in Nigeria, and when he returned to Nigeria, he was threatened with arrest, and then there was an attack on his village, and so he lost family members in this attack. And then there was another horrible incident of a massacre where the jihadists attacked an IDP camp, again in Bishop Anagbi's diocese. And all of this meant as a signal to intimidate, as an effort to intimidate the bishop. So there are examples of incredible heroism in all of this as people stand up to speak the truth, to tell the world what's really going on in Nigeria.
Well, we had very productive meetings at the State Department with very engaged people who were aware and were open to hearing your stories about having been there. And I know in one case with a very, very one of the productive meetings we had, you told them about what we saw. We showed video of you walking through an IDP camp, which anyone who's familiar with these areas can see immediately what it is. People
Right.
without food, they're living in tents for years in squalor, not because of them, because of the fact of their situation.
No fresh water.
No fresh water. And the other point that you observed, because even after you were there, the Fulani jihadists were attacking IDP camps.
Yeah.
So one of the claims that's being made is this is all about land disputes between herders and farmers, something like the Wild West of America.
That's right.
But clearly this wasn't the case. You observed that. Why would they attack IDP camps if this was about land disputes? The people in these IDP camps, in some cases for years, had fled northern and eastern parts of Nigeria long ago, giving up their land, giving up their farms. So we had a wonderful interaction at state with people there. This led, I think, or helped lead, hopefully we had some influence there. It helped, the Secretary Rubio made some statements about this, and then it was followed by the October 31st declaration of Nigeria as a country of particular concern regarding its treatment of Christians. Following days suggesting the U.S. will take even more action. Let's talk about what has followed that. What was the reaction that happened internationally to this going on? It wasn't surprising initially, but also how have things adapted on the ground to the condition of Christians following this?
Yeah, so we had no forewarning of the president's decision to declare Nigeria a country of particular concern. Now, this is a legal designation. It doesn't actually require any specific U.S. government action as the result of the designation, but it strips off the mask and removes any ambiguity that what's going on in Nigeria is just street crime. It's a very clear declaration of the president's determination that there is anti-Christian persecution going on. And as you say, it was the president's decision. I have a lot of admiration for his action because he saw a situation in which he could take action and do good, right? He knew that there was going to be good outcome by his acting. He was acting on behalf of a morally urgent situation. So the decision was his. I have no doubt that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was working behind the scenes, or certainly would have encouraged the president in his determination, because the Secretary shares those concerns. And the good news is it's incredible. This is a tidal wave in Nigeria terms. Following the president's designation, the president of Nigeria announced that he was going to hire more police and military to provide defense. He replaced his Secretary of Defense, or Minister of Defense in their terms. So he's working to get a more diligent individual as the head of the military apparatus in Nigeria. The Catholic bishops of Nigeria put out a very strong statement and put the responsibility for the security crisis firmly on the lap of the government of Nigeria. This is important. It's important that Christian leaders, Catholic bishops, Anglican bishops, and leaders of Protestant denominations speak with one voice. And so the first step in that is that the Catholic bishops come together and agree. And as you said, there are Catholic bishops who have dioceses, they're majority Muslim, and they worry about reprisals. They don't want to be that outspoken because they're afraid of subjecting their flock to greater harm. But legitimate concern. But at the end of the day, Greg, I think it's important to speak the truth. And they did that. And I have no doubt that they were emboldened because of the president's decision to shine a light on what's going on in Nigeria. That's the good news. On the other hand, we had another act of violence against school children in which jihadists raided a Catholic boarding school not terribly far from Abuja, St. Mary's School, and kidnapped 350 students and staff. 50 escaped the night of the kidnapping. Another 100 have been released through the efforts of the government, but that, if my math is correct, that leaves another 150 kids who are being held by the jihadists in wilderness. At the end of the day, we have to say forthrightly what's going on in the country and call on the government to provide security so that the jihad ends.
Right, and the United States has a very complex, engaged relationship with Nigeria. I mean, obviously, we at SPC are focused on this issue, but we do recognize there's economic relationships. You know, Nigeria is one of the largest exporters of oil. The petroleum industry is a major revenue earner for the government. There's technology investment there, especially in Lagos, top tech firms that are engaged. And so there's a lot of foreign investment. So this is not a country isolated from, let's call it the West, from the United States and Europe in terms of high tech and everything else. And so our belief from the beginning of engaging in this was that there could be a productive, positive relationship with the Nigerian government confronting this issue. And obviously there's a lot of complex political issues in Nigeria. We're not experts on all that. But it was clear that with U.S. leadership in pushing the issue, that there could be positive results. And I think it's still the case. There's a lot to be done. I mean, as you know, you mentioned the November 21st kidnapping at St. Mary's Catholic Church. And just December 2nd, how many days ago was that? It was the abduction of Father Emmanuel Ezeme in Kaduna State, again, where we were. The parish priest of St. Peter's Catholic Church was kidnapped by an unidentified gunman from his residence. And no ransom demands yet, but clearly that's probably where this is headed. So the problem continues, but knowing that the Nigerian government could be a partner in dealing with this is a productive result. And obviously, our engagement pastorally from the standpoint of actually trying to help people in Nigeria is our focus in the end. In other words, it's results. And let's talk a bit about what we're doing and what we are going to be looking at doing. We already have 3 projects that we're engaging on raising money for. Let's talk a bit about what we're up to as SPC.
Sure. So let me say first, I came back from Nigeria with the sense that 3 things in particular needed to occur to help the people and ameliorate the security situation, the threat of violence against Christians. One, we've talked about, the U.S. government needs to get the government of Nigeria to step up to the plate and protect its citizens. Another one, Greg, was that it would be extremely helpful for Vatican to keep an international focus on the situation. It will be helpful for the new pontiff to keep the world's attention focused on what's happening in Nigeria. So we're optimistic that the church will move in that direction. The third thing was there needs to be greater solidarity among the Christian churches. In particular, I think the Christian church, and again I'm referring to the Catholics, Anglicans, and Protestants, the major Christian faiths there, could do a lot to tackle the problem of corruption. And it's a major impediment to Nigeria's development. Nigeria is an extremely important country. It's the largest by population in Africa, geographically a little bit bigger than Texas, but 240 million people. It's number 7 in the world and is expected by demographers to overtake the United States as the 3rd most populous country in the world after India and China, which is just remarkable. So what happens in Nigeria is so important to the history, to the future of Africa, and indeed the future of the world. You were inviting me to talk about some practical projects that SPC has identified in Nigeria. And while, we can speak with some encouragement on the developments, the fundamental needs still exist, right? The violence against Christians has not ended. There's positive developments, but the fundamental needs of the Christians remain. A clinic in the far northwest of the country, the city of Sokoto. Sokoto is served by Bishop Kuka of the Catholic Church, the Diocese of Sokoto, and it's a majority Muslim area, and Bishop Kuka intends to open a diagnostic clinic serving both Muslims and Christians, and he's asked us to provide the medical equipment that he needs. He got support for the structure, the building, but he needs now to equip it. And that is from our perspective, a really ideal kind of project, because we believe at SPC that by serving both Muslims and Christians, you are on the margin making it, you're building goodwill and making it a little bit less likely that in some way the church and the Christians will be driven out of Sokoto. It makes their situation, I think, a little bit more secure. And so we are eager to help Bishop Kuka find the equipment needed to facilitate the opening of the clinic. I visited IDP camps. You've mentioned that. These are not happy places. Row after row of tarp-covered shelters, and
up for years in some cases.
And that's right. They've been there for years. And an urgent need is that all the people, majority, mostly Christians, but all of the people in these IDP camps be returned to their home villages. The IDP camps in Benue, this is the breadbasket of Nigeria. And so to the extent people are stuck in IDP camps, it means they're not pursuing their agricultural vocations, right? Farmers are being kept in IDP camps as opposed to growing crops to feed the people. So it's urgent that the people be returned. But in the meantime, I visited a camp in Bishop Nagbi's diocese where there was no fresh water, no well, which meant the women and the children were traveling hours to get water daily, on a daily basis. The provision of fresh water is so altering of one's quality of life.
Something we take for granted here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so we want to dig wells for the IDP camps where there aren't ones to, we pray for the day that the camps will close. But in the meantime, we want to provide fresh water to increase the health of the folks living there, and to make their life a little bit less miserable, to be honest with you. Then there's a question of what can the Christian villages do to protect themselves. And we're not talking about arming anyone, but I think it would be very helpful if there was early warning of the possibility of attacks, some passive protection, barriers, walls, fences that would give the Christian villagers a little bit of opportunity either to get away safely or to be able to stay in their homes, to make an attack less likely. And we're eager to do more. SPC always develops a relationship with the partners that we work with, and we want to meet them and to have confidence that they will carry through with the designs that they have, and so it's not as easy to support international projects as one might think, but we definitely want to identify additional projects in Nigeria.
Well, a quick note on something you had said earlier about the Vatican. I think it's fair to say that the U.S. ambassador now to the Holy See, Brian Birch, is a friend of SPC. We know him well. He's a friend. He's very thoughtful person. He came out with in an interview, a very forceful statement, clearly reflecting U.S. government position, but I know coming from a position of passion on his part about this situation in Nigeria. And that's a sign, I think, of how there's hope in so many directions. The other thing, you pointed out that in Nigeria, and I'll make this factual point, it's Catholic, Episcopalian, and Reform, Protestant. Right. And it's probably more Catholics now than Episcopalian or Church of England, Anglican. But all three communities are very highly represented in Nigeria. And what we have found in the United States is really powerful cooperation and partnership in trying to raise awareness and advocate on behalf of the Christians in Nigeria. And I want to mention Nina Shea, who is one of our partners, who's at the Hudson Institute, and has been advocating this issue for many years, tragically for many years, because she's been very much talking about it and advocating, and this problem had continues. This goes back a long time, what's happening in Nigeria.
In this Advent season, it's appropriate that you mention Nina, because she has been the voice of the wilderness.
A voice in the wilderness, fortunately not the wilderness anymore. And so these are signs of hope. But as you said, the problem on the ground is still there. It's not gone away. People should not think that because of what's happened recently that this is over.
That's right.
As we said, even now, Christians are being killed. And so you raised powerful things that we're doing at SPC, and with partners, advocacy and awareness, we're going to continue that work. And Steve, I think your trip there really had benefits that we didn't even realize. And again, I urge people to take a look at the videos and documentary that we produced after and even while you were there, on the ground reports from Nigeria. They're all still as true and valid as they were when you were there a couple of months ago.
That's right.
And so again, thank you, Steve, for this very informative and inspiring conversation on this critical matter. To our listeners, thank you again for watching, and please continue to support us however much you can so that we can build on the momentum in raising awareness about the situation in Nigeria, and so that we can provide much-needed relief to those who are suffering there. We couldn't have done this without you thus far, and we are very grateful for your continued support. Until next time, many blessings to you all in this holiday season.